In this video, we're going to be talking about another type of consonant, which is the affricate. Affricates are sounds that are sort of a combination of both stops and fricatives, and they're somewhat unique in that way, that they sort of are a combination of two things, but we consider them one sound because of the way they work in English. And they happen to be phonemic, at least the two affricates we're talking about right now. So that means that they can change the meaning in a word, as you remember from before. And that you can find minimal pairs where they will contrast with stops and fricatives, so that we know that they're separate sounds and should be considered separately. So we're going to talk about just two today. And we're going to talk about how they differ based on their place of articulation. All right, that's an important thing we have to remember. We're always going to classify sounds by place, manner, and voicing. All right, so we've got voicing as well here as one of our other considerations. And we're going to talk about how it affects the length of the preceding vowel. All right, so you can think of it as what it does to any vowels in front of it, or you can think of it in terms of what we've been talking about, our fortis versus lenis distinction. And that's how you spell lenis. Okay. So our two affricates in English are those two symbols you see here on the screen. We have this first one that I'm circling right now is ch, as in church. And this second set of symbols here combined together to make one sound is j, as in judge. All right, and those are our two sounds. Now they both happen to be post-alveolar. All right, if you're having trouble spelling that, post is pretty straightforward, and then we have alveolar. So that means we're talking about the alveolar ridge. If we have our teeth here, we've got our alveolar ridge, and it sort of moves on into our palate and soft palate. So post, that part of the name, just means we're talking about a little bit behind the alveolar ridge. So we're talking about somewhere a little bit around that area, just behind that fleshy bump behind our teeth. All right, so they both share the same place of articulation. All you have to remember is the other distinctions. All right, so they're both post-alveolar, they're both affricates, but they differ in terms of force of articulation, as we talked about with stops. All right, so we have a strong sound, and we call those fortis, as we talked about before, and lenis sounds are considered weak. All right, and just to review, the distinction is whether the sound involves more muscular effort, more airflow, or a little bit longer duration. You know, those are going to be our stronger sounds versus those that have the weaker end of those distinctions, and that would be lenis. All right, and for these sounds, these affricates, ch is fortis. All right, so this one is our fortis sound. J is lenis. All right, so as we learned before, though, our Our voiceless sounds are our Fortis sounds, and the voiced ones are our Lenis sounds. So then you should be able to guess which one is which here, as long as you can remember how that works. All right, so our voiced sound is ja, and our voiceless is cha. And cha is always voiceless, and we're going to talk about ja. It's a little bit complicated. It's generally a voice sound, but there's some allophones of this sound that we'll talk about when we get to the allophone lectures. All right, so if you think about all of these different words here, I'm going to transcribe them for you. We have per, and then we have purge, and then we have, if I can fit this in, perch. All right, and if you say each of those, trying to do it naturally and not mess it up by being too self-aware, per, purge, perch, you'll notice the vowel gets progressively shorter as we go on. Oh, I managed to turn off my, sorry. There we go. I turned off my drawing somehow. There we go. This and this . All right, so it goes from long to short, just based on the influence of the sounds around it. All right, so cha is a voiceless sound, and it's also Fortis, so it's a little bit longer, and that vowel just shortens to compensate for that. All right, so just remember that that's what will happen. Always the ones with like an open syllable here with no consonant after it, it's going to have the longest vowel. A vowel that's followed by a voiced consonant, it's going to be slightly shorter than that, and the one with the voiceless consonant after the vowel is going to be the shortest of all. All right, so here are our descriptions of cha that I will leave you to read for your own and work your way through. Study all the articulatory descriptions of all the sounds, even though it's a lot of detail. And they're very helpful, and I will ask about them. But I'm going to leave that to you to study rather than reading it in front of you, and we'll pay attention to the video I have, or I've just chosen one. I have articulatory videos of both sounds, and those can help you visualize this description as it's written out. All right, so let's listen to, I believe I have ja here, which I'm not a huge fan of how the sound is as they recorded it, but it's close enough. Ja. All right, and it's probably because they tried to leave just the sound purely without any vowel after. It sounds a little artificial and a little off, though, because of that. All right, so you'll notice that ja here, the tongue has moved up to that post-alveolar place. And that's the first stop. It's the first part. It's going to be a lot like a stop, where the tongue's going to briefly make contact there and block off that airflow momentarily. You also notice that the velum is raised so that there can't be any nasal airflow. All right, so all the air is only directed into the oral cavity here. All right, so that tongue briefly makes that contact, but then it's going to lower, not raise, lower, I caught myself there, lower slightly so that a little bit of air can escape through this area, and there you get that friction, that fricative aspect. right? And it's going to do that so fast that I probably can't catch it on this round, but I'll try and catch it on the next playthrough. Right, and you'll see here, if you watch these videos repeatedly, for ja, our vocal folds are down here and they're going to be vibrating for this sound. If we were talking about cha, the voiceless one, it's going to look exactly the same up here, but the vocal folds are not going to vibrate during that sound. All right, let me see if I can capture it sort of in the fricative stage in the next playthrough. All right, the tongue went back down, but really when you get to the fricative part, it's going to be a little bit closer here. Close enough so that you get that turbulent airflow as the air has to kind of squeeze through a narrow passage between the tongue and that area behind the alveolar ridge. All right, so that together makes our affricate sounds in English, the only two, thankfully, to think of this time. So do your warm-ups and let me know what questions or thoughts that have gone through your head as you've learned about these sounds.